Hi, I'm Sherry and this is Gardening in the North, and today we are going to be talking about making your very own seed starting mix. So a lot of you are probably going to be starting your seeds, if you haven't already, in the next couple weeks. It doesn't really matter what zone you're in. If you haven't started them, you will be starting them. And the number one thing besides your seeds that you're going to need is seed starting mix. Now, you can purchase this from the store. There are many different brands out there that you can get, but you can also make it at a much lower cost than buying it from the stores. Your seed starter mix really only needs 2 ingredients: Coco Coir or peat moss mixed with perlite. Basically, you're giving your seed an aerated, warm, and moist area to grow. Everything that the seed needs, it has in terms of nutrition, and it's going to do its job if you give it the right foundation to do that in. Now, let's talk a little bit about the ingredients, the cost of these ingredients, the cost savings that you're going to get by making your own, and how much you need of each item. Let's first talk about Coco Coir. So Coco Coir is an organic material from coconut husks and coconut fiber. And when you purchase this particular item, it always or almost always comes in a block like this. Now, what you're going to do is open this up. You're going to break it apart. You can add water to it and watch how it expands. So this block here, which is 5 kilograms, is actually going to provide me just over 2 cubic square feet. So that's a lot. Now, I purchased this at Amazon for $23.99, and that's Canadian dollars. So $23.99. So keep that in mind, because as I go through each item that you're going to need, and I provide you the Canadian prices that I paid for them, I then want to compare it to buying seed starter mix in the store. So let's talk a little bit about peat moss. Peat moss is dead fibrous materials that are found in peat bogs. Now, interesting fact about peat moss that you may or may not know is that the majority of peat moss that is sold and bought in the States is actually harvested here in Canada. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I hadn't known that before I started making my own, and I thought I would share that with you. This big bag of peat moss here I purchased at Canadian Tire, and it was $12.99. Now, this big bag for $12.99 will give me roughly 3.8 cubic square feet. I've already talked a little bit about the quantity of material that you get for the price point. But let's take a look at what the actual material itself looks like. Now, you'll remember that it took me a little bit to get this out of that block. I needed to use a little bit of muscles, but it's very fibrous, and it's going to take me a while to really break this up into a more refined state. Compared to the peat moss that is already nicely crumbled. Perlite is a volcanic glass that is heated to about 1600 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 871 Celsius. And they heat it to that temperature until it pops pretty much like a popcorn and expands to about 13 times its size. This results in a very lightweight material. Once this has gone through the heating and the popping stage, you're basically left with a material that has a lot of air compartments within the pieces that you receive. Now, you can't see it with the naked eye, but if you were to put this under a microscope, you would see that there are a lot of air compartments, little spaces within this material. And basically what that does is it provides that added drainage that you need when you're starting your seedlings. This is also a great product if you're making your own potting soil, because potting soil can be a little bit more heavy, and you want to add this to add in that extra aeration that heavy potting soil needs. This bag of perlite was purchased at Canadian Tire for roughly $8. Now, the recipe that I like to use is 2 parts of the peat moss or the Coco Coir mixed with 1 part of the perlite. Now, what I mean by that is you're going to do equal parts to equal parts. So if you're using a cup, then you're going to do 1 cup of perlite to 2 cups peat moss. If you're using a bucket, you're just going to do 1 bucket full of perlite to 2 bucketfuls of peat moss. I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about the actual store-bought seed starting mix. Now, this particular brand here was $7.99 at Canadian Tire. And you can buy this particular brand at Walmart, Home Depot, Home Hardware, any of the big box stores. I know that they also sell other brands like Jiffy, and you could probably get seed starting mix, different brands that are in larger quantities as well if you went to your local co-op. But for the purposes of this video, I want to take a few minutes to talk about actually buying store-bought seed mix and why you would. So if you're only doing a few little pots, if you're only starting a few seeds, then making your own homemade seed starting mix may not be the best route for you economically. You may just want to spend the $8 and buy a bag and be done with it. Now, for someone like myself who, is probably going to be starting 350 seeds or growing 350 seedlings, it means that I need a lot of seed starting mix. So I prefer to make my own. Having said that, I have purchased this seed starting mix in the past. So last year at the end of the season, I was lucky enough to come across a great sale on Amazon, and they were offering these as add-ons. If you spent so much money on Amazon, you got to buy as many of these as you could for $5, or I think it was 4 something. So it ended up being a really great price. So I think I bought close to 20 bags of them. And so I'm just finishing off these ones now. So I am going to need to start making my own for the rest of my seeds. Before I show you what the peat moss and perlite mixture looks like, as well as the Coco Coir and perlite mixture looks like compared to the store-bought mixture, I really want to show you what the cost analysis is for making your own. I think that any of you watching up to this point are going to be surprised. So if you have another 2 minutes and 30 seconds, this is probably going to be the most crucial part of this video. Let's take a look. Before we can figure out the cost comparison, let's figure out what the cost of all the materials is. For store-bought seed starting mix, for an 8.8 liter bag, it's $7.99. For Coco Coir, 2.3 cubic feet, it's $23.99. Peat moss for 3.8 cubic feet, $12.99. And perlite for an 8.8 liter bag, it's $7.99. There are 28 liters in 1 cubic foot, and the seed starting mix that I like to use is 2 parts Coco Coir and 1 part perlite. Coco Coir costs $23.99 for 2.3 cubic feet. So 28 liters times the 2.3 cubic feet equals 64 liters. So you take the cost of the Coco Coir divided by the amount of liters, which is 64, and you get 37 cents a liter. You take the 8.8 liter bag of the perlite and you times it by the 37 cents per liter, and you get $3.26. $3.26 times 2, because that's the recipe, you get $6.52 of Coco Coir per batch of recipe. Now, $6.52 for Coco Coir plus the $7.99 perlite equals $14.51 for 3 bags worth. Store-bought, you're paying $23.97. So as I mentioned, 28 liters in 1 cubic feet, and we do 2 parts peat moss, 1 part perlite. So peat moss costs $12.99 for 3.8 cubic feet, which means that there was 106 liters in that big bag that I had. So you take the cost, which is $12.99, and you divide that by the 106 liters that is in the 3.8, and you get 12 cents a liter. Again, we times that by the size of the bag of the perlite, and you get $1.05. Now we have to times that by 2 because there are 2 parts peat moss, and the total cost for the peat moss recipe is $10.09 for 3 bags worth, whereas the store-bought is still $23.97 for the exact same quantity. So cost comparison for 3 bags of seed starting mix, store-bought, you're paying $23.97. Coco Coir and Perlite, make it yourself, you're paying $14.51, and the peat moss and perlite, $10.09. That is a 57% cost savings by making your own. So now that you know that it is a 57% cost savings to make your own seed starting mix, are you going to do it? Let's take a look at what the mixtures look like. Let's take a look at the finished product. This one here is the Coco Coir and Perlite. You can see the steam coming off of it. I added some hot boiling water. I just wanted to see what all 3 of them would look like once I moistened them up. This one here is the peat moss. And this one here is store-bought. The Coco Coir and Perlite has a lot of fibrous material in it still. But that's going to add to the fluffiness of this mixture, and it's going to allow your seedlings to really stretch out and grow. The peat moss and perlite is nice and fluffy, it's crumbly, and there is going to be a lot of room for movement for those seedling roots. Now, the store-bought stuff is very interesting because it really does lack the perlite that these 2 mixtures have. And considering that these 2 mixtures here cost 57% less than that one, I know which one I'm going to be doing from now on 100% of the time. One thing I want to mention to you before I end this video is that I'm outside, mainly because I'm a messy gardener, but when I bring this stuff inside, I'm not going to plant any of my seeds in it until it actually warms up. You never want to plant seedlings or seeds into any kind of soil that is cold. You want to make sure that you bring it inside, it gets warmed up, so even for 24 hours before you actually plant anything in it. I hope you've liked this video. Please leave me comments below to let me know if you make your own. Thanks for spending time with me.